This is a really amazing antique here. This is a white jade mace head from Costa Rica, roughly 1st millennium AD. Just from looking at my channel, if nowhere else, you'll know that green jade, kind of the more classic color, jade implements from Costa Rica are quite famous. This is a little bit more rare. Now, I absolutely love the design. It's one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Like a lot of art from Central and South America, it's zoomorphic. It's kind of animal-inspired, maybe animal/god, animal/man. Here's an example of how a very similar piece would have been hafted. Nice that somebody put that online. Now, this is from Costa Rica, like we talked about. So here's kind of a map of the indigenous populations from the modern country. And here's just a brief image of some of the indigenous people of Costa Rica. And it was their ancestors, broadly speaking, of course, that over 1,000 years ago created this. Now, if you notice, this thing has a kind of a protuberance on its forehead, and both of the men in that last picture, by stuffing feathers or something in their headbands, also kind of have that shape of something rising up. So anyway, thought that was interesting. Now, it has all these extra holes, but that it's an actual face seems pretty clear, right? You can see the eyes, nose, ears. And you can see here how it's rectangular, kind of horizontally. That's actually the shape of it. So maces have been around for a really long time in a wide variety of cultures. Both this specimen here from Europe, classic flanged mace, and this one here from India prove that they were found to be useful long after the invention of metal armor. In fact, that might be their shining moment in history, because once your opponent is heavily armored, you need something like this to get through that, get some kind of impact through that and hurt him. It's going to be really hard to cut the guy on the inside of that. But then, funny enough, the stone mace, so the mace overall, is a truly prehistoric weapon as well. Here are some Native American Iwarajingas. I don't know how to pronounce that properly, but anyway, people have been hitting each other with sticks for a very long time. So it was a long time ago that someone said, well, what if we attach a rock to the end of this stick? It'll be much more effective. And really, then the mace was born. They were a big thing in ancient Egypt. Foot soldiers used them. It was a primary infantry weapon for a long time, but it also became a symbol of authority. So you can see, right, we've got a pharaoh, someone of importance here, subjugating people with his mace. And that was not just a thing in Egypt. The mace as a symbol of authority and prestige was a worldwide thing, and that's interesting for a weapon that started so humbly. It's not an item that requires the level of craftsmanship that a sword does. Like, if you're going to make a sword that can actually survive a battle, making that thin piece of metal battle-ready is way different from just a heavy stick. So, back to this one, all of that was to say, this seems to be a prestige item as well. Is this a functional mace? Well, if you hit somebody with this, it would do the job. There's no question about that. It's also a practical size and weight. It only weighs about a pound, and historically that's about right. Speed kills, as the saying in football goes, and the same goes with weapons. So, movies have these ridiculously large, heavy weapons, and no, it's just not very practical. So even an impact weapon, you're going to have to swing it over and over again. So for one thing, it can only be so heavy, or you're going to just putter out in the middle of a battle. But also, it's really going to matter if you can get to your target in time before they get to you. But look at that view. Just, again, artistically, I love this thing. Now, usually with weapons, the highly decorated versions were not meant for battle. I think it's more of a complicated case here, I'm not sure. Here's a very analogous item, right? Another kind of animal-faced mace head, and this would be eminently practical. This is from the exact same area, by the way, so we know this was a thing. And yeah, I think maybe if you could afford it, then you would carry one of these. Here's a bat-headed specimen, also from Costa Rica, and we know that indigenous warriors in Central America and South America particularly invoked animals, right? Like, you have an elite warrior class who would associate themselves very closely to an animal. So this one here, the last specimen, it takes a lot of work to make that, but I think it was for actual combat use. This one here, it's a jade, precious material, very difficult to work with, especially with the technology they had back then. I've covered that in some of my other videos. Just grueling work to do these intricate carvings and to bore through the stone. This one, definitely a prestige object. I could see somebody carrying around, show how important they are. It could be something that a ruler carried, but we don't know for certain. It's a much simpler matter with a pre-Columbian mace head like this. Yeah, this was made for battle, period. Here's the hole for the actual haft, like super up close. You can see the actual pattern and polish on the stone. And if you recall from some of my other videos, yeah, they had to use abrasive materials attached to sticks and strings and that kind of thing, and then use that to just methodically bore their way through a stone like this. So they did not have metal-tipped drills or anything like that. The strings meaning to carve lines into the surface of the rock, not to make the hole for the haft like this. So there's just no telling how many hours it took to make this hole that we're looking at here, the actual one for the haft. It must have been grueling. Then you revisit the fact that this has a lot of extra decoration, extra holes, right? Those laborious to bore holes that aren't the eyes or the nose, and or the ears, and they still went to the trouble of doing those, and I think they look great. They add to the effect of this thing. Here's a detail on the nose. So all that effort, probably not your typical foot soldier, I wouldn't think. Even though we were in all likelihood talking about an elite warrior class doing the fighting in this society. I'll switch over to one final look because I do think this thing is an artistic success. I love it. Kind of looks like something they would use in like a movie based on H.R. Giger illustrations and paintings, that kind of thing. Or maybe something by Guillermo del Toro. So anyway, one of the coolest ancient weapons I've ever held. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.